Captain Jake Morrison looked out at the stars from the bridge of the ESS Liberty and felt his heart sink. What he saw was not the peaceful darkness of space that humans had grown to love. Instead, thousands of alien ships filled the void around, Earth like angry hornets around their nest. Each ship was bigger than anything humans had ever built. Their hulls gleamed with strange metals that seemed to bend light itself. These were the ships of the Galactic Council, and they had come to destroy everything Jake held dear. The communication panel beeped with an incoming message. Admiral Lisa Hayes stood next to Jake as the main screen flickered to life. What appeared before them was unlike anything they had seen before. The creature was tall and made of what looked like living crystal. Its body caught the light and threw it back in rainbow patterns. When it spoke, its voice came from everywhere at once, filling the bridge with a sound like breaking glass mixed with thunder. "I am High Arbiter Zefkal of the Galactic Council," the being said. Its words were cold and final, like a judge reading a death sentence. "You humans have broken the sacred doctrine. You have built ships that travel faster than light without our permission. You have explored space without asking us first. You have acted like you own the stars when you are nothing but children playing with fire." Jake felt anger rise in his chest, but he stayed quiet. Admiral Hayes stepped forward with her chin raised high. She had fought in 3 wars on Earth and had never backed down from anyone. She was not about to start now, even if these aliens could turn Earth into dust with a thought. "We are a free people," Hayes said in a voice that carried across the bridge. "We do not need anyone's permission to explore our universe. We have hurt no one and threatened no one. We simply wanted to see what was out there among the stars." The crystal being made a sound that might have been laughter but sounded more like ice cracking in winter. "Freedom is an illusion for species like yours. The galaxy has rules that have kept peace for 10,000 years. We decide who can travel between stars. We decide who can build weapons. We decide who lives and who dies. This is how it has always been and how it will always be." In the depths of Earth, Dr. Alex Turner worked in his underground lab surrounded by machines that hummed with power. His team had been studying the alien technology they had managed to scan from a distance. What they found surprised them all. The aliens were advanced, yes, but not as advanced as they wanted everyone to believe. Their ships were old designs that had not changed in thousands of years. Their weapons were powerful but predictable. Most importantly, their technology relied on fear and control rather than innovation. Alex looked at the data on his screens and shook his head. These aliens had stopped growing. They had reached a point where they decided they knew everything worth knowing. They had built their empire not on being better than everyone else, but on making sure no one else could become better than them. It was like a smart kid in school who stayed at the top of the class by making sure all the other kids could not read books. President Maria Santos sat in the war room deep beneath the White House. Around the table were the leaders of every major nation on Earth. The Chinese premier looked worried. The Russian president seemed angry. The European Union representative kept checking her phone for updates from home. They all knew what was at stake. The aliens had given Earth 72 hours to surrender completely or watch their planet burn. "They want us to give up everything," Santos said as she read the alien demands again. "Our technology, our weapons, our freedom to explore space. They want us to become slaves who ask permission before we can even leave our own solar system." Commander Rick Davis stood at the far end of the table. He was a man who had spent his life preparing for threats that might come from other countries on Earth. He had never imagined he would need to defend against aliens from distant stars. But as he listened to the alien demands, something inside him hardened like steel. "There is another option," Davis said quietly. Everyone turned to look at him. "We can tell them no." The room fell silent. The weight of those words hung in the air like smoke from a fire. Tell the aliens no. Refuse to surrender to beings who could destroy Earth with weapons beyond human understanding. It sounded like suicide. "They have ships that can crack planets," the Chinese premier said. "They have weapons we cannot even understand. How can we possibly fight them?" Davis walked to the front of the room and looked each leader in the eye. "Because we are human," he said simply. "Every species these aliens have conquered has one thing in common. When faced with superior force, they surrendered. They decided that living as slaves was better than dying as free people. But that is not who we are. Humans have never surrendered to anyone or anything. We fought ice ages and plagues and famines and wars. We climbed out of caves and built cities and reached for the stars because we refused to accept that we cannot do something. Santos felt something stir in her chest. It was the same feeling her grandfather had described when he fought in the old wars. The feeling of knowing you might die but deciding that some things were worth dying for. What are you suggesting, Commander? I am suggesting we show these aliens something they have never seen before, Davis said with a smile that was not pleasant at all. A species that will not kneel. A species that would rather burn than bow. A species that will fight for freedom even when the odds are impossible. Outside Earth's atmosphere, the alien fleet waited for humanity's answer. High Arbiter Zefkal was confident that these humans would surrender like all the others. In 10,000 years of ruling the galaxy, no species had ever chosen destruction over submission. The pattern was always the same. First came fear, then negotiations, then acceptance of their place in the galactic order. But Zefkal had made one crucial mistake. He had never encountered humans before. And humans, as the galaxy was about to learn, did not follow the same patterns as everyone else. The answer came exactly 72 hours later. High Arbiter Zefkal expected to receive a message of surrender from the human leaders. Instead, he received something that had never happened in the 10,000-year history of the Galactic Council. The humans said no. Admiral Lisa Hayes stood before the communication screen on the bridge of the ESS Liberty. Behind her, the flags of every nation on Earth hung side by side. Her voice was calm and clear as she delivered humanity's response to the alien ultimatum. We reject your demands, Hayes said. We will not surrender our freedom. We will not give up our technology. We will not become slaves to your empire. Earth stands free and will remain free as long as a single human draws breath. Zefkal's crystal form seemed to darken with anger. Then you have chosen death. We will turn your world to ash and dust. Your species will become a warning to others about the price of defying the Council. Hayes smiled in a way that made the alien pause. Before you do that, you might want to check your communication networks. Engineer Kate Phillips worked frantically at the Luna Base communications array. Around her, dozens of technicians operated, the most powerful transmitters humanity had ever built. These machines could send signals across the entire galaxy in a matter of hours. For the past 3 days, they had been broadcasting continuously. What they were sending would change everything. Every piece of human knowledge was being transmitted to every world in the galaxy. The principles of democracy and individual freedom, the concepts of human rights and self-determination, the technologies of nuclear fusion and quantum computing, the medical advances that had extended human life and cured diseases. Most importantly, they were broadcasting the simple but revolutionary idea that no being had the right to rule over another without consent. Lieutenant Ben Carter piloted his scout ship through the outer reaches of the solar system. His mission was to observe the alien fleet and report back on their movements. But what he discovered was far more important than ship positions and weapon capabilities. He found something the aliens had never wanted anyone to know. Hidden in the data streams between alien ships, Ben discovered the truth about the Galactic Council's empire. The galaxy was not ruled by superior beings who had earned their position through advancement and wisdom. Instead, it was controlled through fear and lies. The aliens maintained power by preventing other species from developing technology or sharing knowledge. They kept entire civilizations in the dark about what was possible. Dr. Rachel Stone analyzed the intercepted alien communications in her laboratory on Mars. What she found shocked even her scientific mind. The alien technology was not as advanced as they claimed. Most of their ships used designs that were thousands of years old. Their weapons were powerful but simple. Their computers were fast but inflexible. They had reached a point where they stopped trying to improve and instead focused on stopping others from improving. They are technological parasites, Stone reported to Earth Command. They conquered advanced civilizations long ago and stole their technology. Then they prevented those civilizations from developing anything new. The Council has been living off stolen innovations for millennia while making sure no one else could threaten their position. The first response to humanity's broadcast came from a world called Vectar in the Outer Rim. The Vectari were a warrior species that had been enslaved by the Council 3,000 years earlier. For 30 centuries, they had been forced to serve as soldiers in the Council's armies, fighting wars to conquer other worlds for their masters. Captain Susan Wright monitored the Vectar transmissions from her position at the edge of the solar system. The messages were short and brutal, but they carried a meaning that made her heart race with hope. The Vectari were rebelling. After 3,000 years of slavery, they had heard humanity's message about freedom and remembered what it meant to fight for themselves instead of their masters. The rebellion spread faster than anyone had imagined. The peaceful Morden, who had served as administrators and bureaucrats for the Council, began questioning why they needed masters at all. The aquatic Salkath stopped providing the rare minerals the Council used to build their ships. Even the insectoid Hyvenol, who had been loyal servants for 5,000 years, started developing weapons based on human designs. General Paul Harrison coordinated with rebel leaders across 12 star systems from his command center deep beneath the icy Rocky Mountains. The quantum communication devices that Dr. Turner's team had developed allowed instant contact across vast distances. For the first time in galactic history, oppressed species could coordinate their resistance. The Galactic Council's response was swift and brutal. They sent fleets to crush the rebellions on a dozen worlds. Entire cities were burned from orbit. Millions died as the Council tried to restore order through terror. But for every world they destroyed, 3 more joined. The uprising. The Council's greatest strength had become their greatest weakness. Their vast empire was too big to control when every world decided to resist at once. Dr. Amy Foster studied the psychological profiles of the Council species and made a discovery that explained everything. The ruling aliens were not naturally superior to the species they controlled. They were simply the descendants of ancient conquerors who had forgotten how to innovate. They maintained power through tradition and fear, not through actual advancement or wisdom. They are like a royal family that has ruled for so long they believe they deserve to rule, Foster explained to the Earth Defense Council. They have convinced themselves and others that they are naturally better than everyone else. But the truth is they are terrified of losing their position. That is why they work so hard to prevent other species from advancing. They know that if others catch up to them technologically, their claim to superiority will be exposed as a lie. The alien fleets around Earth began to show signs of strain. Ships that had been in perfect formation started to drift as crews received news from across the galaxy. Council officers found themselves dealing with mutinies as subject species among their own crews began to question orders. The rigid hierarchy that had held the Council together for 10,000 years was starting to crack under the pressure of a single revolutionary idea: that all beings deserved freedom. High Arbiter Zefkal realized too late what the humans had done. They had not just refused to surrender. They had declared war on the entire concept of the Galactic Council's authority. They had told every oppressed species in the galaxy that resistance was possible. They had given hope to civilizations that had forgotten what hope felt like. But Zefkal was not ready to give up his empire without a fight. He ordered every Council fleet in the galaxy to converge on Earth. If these humans wanted to destroy the natural order of things, he would make sure they paid for it with their lives. The final battle for the future of the galaxy was about to begin. The galaxy burned with revolution. From the core worlds to the outer rim, species that had served the Galactic Council for thousands of years were rising up against their masters. The human broadcasts had done more than share technology and ideas. They had awakened something that the Council thought they had destroyed forever: the desire for freedom. Captain Susan Wright commanded the first human diplomatic mission to leave the solar system since the crisis began. Her ship, the ESS Defiance, slipped through the Council blockade using new stealth technology that Dr. Turner's team had developed. Her destination was Vectar Prime, homeworld of the warrior species that had been the Council's most loyal soldiers for 3 millennia. The journey to Vectar took 2 weeks through hyperspace routes that human ships had never traveled before. When Wright arrived, she found a world in chaos. Cities burned as Vectari rebels fought against Council garrisons. The sky was filled with ships as former slaves attacked their former masters with weapons they had built from human designs transmitted across the galaxy. Commander Kralvex met right at the ruins of what had once been the Council's administrative center on Vectar Prime. The Vectari warrior stood 8 feet tall with gray skin covered in ritual scars that told the story of battles fought for masters he had never chosen, but his eyes burned with something Wright recognized immediately, the fire of a being who had remembered what it meant to be free. "Your people have given us a gift we thought was lost forever," Kralvex said in broken but determined human language. He had learned from the broadcasts. "You have reminded us that we are warriors, not slaves. For 3,000 years we fought for the Council because we forgot we could fight for ourselves." Wright looked around at the devastation and felt both hope and sorrow. Freedom always comes with a price. The question is whether you think it is worth paying. Kralvex pointed to a monument in the center of the ruined plaza. It showed Vectari warriors kneeling before Council masters, carved in stone to remind the population of their place in the galactic order. The monument was now broken, its pieces scattered by explosions and fighting. "We have paid the price of slavery for 3,000 years. Now we choose to pay the price of freedom instead." General Paul Harrison coordinated the growing rebellion from his command center on Earth. Reports flooded in from across the galaxy as more species joined the uprising. The peaceful Morden had taken control of their homeworld's government and declared independence from the Council. The aquatic Salkath had stopped all mineral shipments to Council worlds, crippling their war machine. Most surprisingly, the insectoid Hyvenal had broken free from the collective control that the Council had imposed on their queens for 5,000 years. Each species brought their own strengths to the rebellion. The Vectari provided warrior skills and tactical knowledge. The Morden offered administrative expertise and diplomatic contacts. The Salkath controlled trade routes and resource production. The Hyvenal contributed manufacturing capacity and swarm tactics. Together, they formed an alliance unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Dr. Amy Foster studied the psychological profiles of the rebelling species and made a discovery that explained why the human message had been so effective. Every species in the galaxy had once been free. The Council had not conquered primitive civilizations and lifted them up. Instead, they had found advanced societies and beaten them down. The desire for freedom had never truly died in any of these species. It had only been suppressed and hidden away, waiting for someone to remind them that resistance was possible. The Council's response was predictable but devastating. They sent their most powerful fleets to crush the rebellions on key worlds. Entire planets were bombed from orbit until their surfaces were nothing but glass and ash. Billions died as the Council tried to restore order through terror and violence. But the rebels had learned from human history that freedom required sacrifice, and they were finally willing to pay that price. Lieutenant Ben Carter led reconnaissance missions to Council worlds and discovered something that changed everything. The alien empire was not as unified as they pretended to be. Many of the Council species were themselves divided between rulers and ruled. The crystal beings like Zefkal formed the ruling class, but they relied on other alien species to do most of the actual work of running their empire. Some of these servant species were beginning to question their loyalty as well. The first major victory came at the Battle of Morden Station. The peaceful Morden had no military tradition, but they had something else. They controlled the galaxy's financial systems. When they froze Council accounts and redirected funds to the rebellion, the alien empire suddenly found itself unable to pay its own soldiers. Ships that had been preparing to attack rebel worlds instead found themselves stranded without fuel or supplies. Engineer Kate Phillips worked around the clock to maintain communication between rebel worlds. The quantum communication network that humans had developed allowed instant coordination across vast distances. For the first time in galactic history, oppressed species could share information and coordinate their resistance in real time. The Council's ability to control information had been their greatest weapon. Now that weapon was turned against them. Dr. Rachel Stone made another breakthrough that shocked both human and alien scientists. Analysis of captured Council technology revealed that the aliens had actually regressed over the millennia. Their current ships and weapons were inferior to designs they had used thousands of years earlier. The Council had become so focused on maintaining control that they had stopped advancing. They were like a civilization that had reached its peak and then slowly declined, while convincing itself it was still at the top. The rebellion reached a turning point when the Salkath fleet arrived at Earth. The aquatic aliens had been among the Council's most trusted allies, controlling trade routes and resource production across the galaxy, but they had also been listening to human broadcasts about democracy and self-determination. When they arrived at Earth, it was not to attack, but to join the human cause. Admiral Hayes met with the Salkath commanders in a historic conference aboard the ESS Liberty. The aquatic aliens spoke through translation devices, their voices bubbling like water flowing over stones. Their leader, Admiral Corsil, had served the Council for 2 centuries. Now he was ready to serve the cause of freedom instead. "We have transported Council fleets across the galaxy for 1,000 years, Corsil said. "We know their movements, their supply lines, their weaknesses. We offer this knowledge to the rebellion, along with our ships and our loyalty to the cause of freedom." The alliance between humans and aliens was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. Species that had been enemies for millennia now worked together against their common oppressor. Vektari warriors fought alongside peaceful Morden diplomats. Salkath merchants shared intelligence with human scientists. The Hyvenal queens coordinated their swarms with human tactical computers. High Arbiter Zefkal watched his empire crumble from his flagship above the Council homeworld. For 10,000 years, the Galactic Order had remained stable through fear and control. Now a single species from a primitive world had destroyed everything in a matter of months. The humans had not conquered the galaxy through superior technology or military might. They had done something far more dangerous. They had given every oppressed species permission to dream of something better. The final phase of the rebellion was about to begin. Council fleets from across the galaxy were converging on Earth for one last desperate attempt to crush the human homeworld and restore the old order. But they would not be facing humanity alone. For the first time in galactic history, the oppressed species of the galaxy were united in common cause. The Age of 4, the Galactic Council was ending, and the Age of Freedom was about to begin. The largest fleet in galactic history assembled at the edge of the Sol system. 10,000 Council warships formed a wall of metal and energy that stretched across space like a second asteroid belt. Each ship was a fortress capable of destroying worlds. Their combined firepower could turn Earth into cosmic dust in minutes. High Arbiter Zefkal stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Dominion, and prepared to end the human rebellion once and for all. Admiral Jack Thompson watched the alien armada approach from the bridge of the ESS Liberty. The human fleet that faced them seemed pitiful by comparison. Only 300 ships defended Earth, and most of them were converted civilian vessels hastily fitted with weapons. The odds were more than 30-1 against humanity. Any reasonable military commander would have surrendered immediately. But Jack Thompson was not reasonable, and he was not alone. Beside the human ships floated vessels from a dozen rebel species. Vektari warships bristled with weapons designed for close combat. Morden diplomatic cruisers had been converted into communication centers to coordinate the defense. Salkath transports carried supplies and reinforcements. Most importantly, hundreds of small fighter craft from the liberated Hyvenal swarmed around the larger ships like angry insects defending their nest. Zefkal opened a communication channel to the human fleet. His crystalline form appeared on screens throughout the rebel alliance, and his voice echoed with the authority of 10,000 years of galactic rule. "This is your final opportunity to surrender. Give up this foolish rebellion and submit to Council authority. We will allow your species to continue existing as servants. Refuse, and we will erase every trace of humanity from the galaxy." Thompson stepped forward to respond. Behind him stood representatives from every rebel species. Commander Kralvex of the Vektari wore his battle armor covered in the ritual scars of a warrior who had never known defeat. Admiral Corsil of the Salkath floated in a mobile water tank, his aquatic form rippling with determination. Queen Zixara of the Hyvenal spoke for billions of her children who had finally broken free from Council control. President Santos, represented not just Earth but the dream of freedom that had spread across the galaxy. "We have heard your offer," Thompson said in a voice that carried clearly across space. "Our answer is the same as it has always been. We choose freedom over slavery, dignity over submission, hope over fear. If you want to destroy us, you will have to try. But know this, we will not die quietly, and we will not die alone." The battle began with a display of force that shook the very fabric of space. The Council fleet opened fire with weapons that tore holes in reality itself. Energy beams capable of melting continents lanced out toward the human homeworld. But they struck something the aliens had not expected. A shield wall formed by the combined fleets of the rebellion. Commander Nicole Adams led the human fighter squadrons in a desperate charge against impossible odds. Her pilots were outnumbered, 100 to 1, but they had something the Council forces lacked: the ability to adapt and improvise. While alien tactics followed patterns established over millennia, human pilots created new strategies in the middle of battle. The ESS Courage, commanded by Captain Billy Rogers, rammed itself into the side of a Council dreadnought 3 times its size. The human ship was destroyed, but its sacrifice created a breach that allowed Vectari fighters to pour inside the alien vessel. Within minutes, the massive enemy ship was drifting powerless as Vectari warriors fought hand-to-hand battles in its corridors. Dr. Alex Turner coordinated the technical aspects of the battle from his underground bunker on Earth. His team had developed new weapons based on captured alien technology, but with human modifications that made them unpredictable and effective. Quantum torpedoes phased through Council shields. Gravity mines created temporary black holes that swallowed enemy fighters. Most effective of all were the computer viruses that human hackers transmitted to alien ships, causing their ancient systems to malfunction in ways their creators had never imagined. The tide of battle shifted when Queen Zixara unleashed the full might of the Hyvenal swarm. Millions of small fighters poured out of hidden bases on asteroids and moons throughout the solar system. Each fighter was piloted by a Hyvenal warrior who shared a telepathic link with their queen. They moved like a single organism, flowing around Council formations and striking at weak points with perfect coordination. Admiral Corsil led the Salcath fleet in a maneuver that caught the Council forces completely off guard. The aquatic aliens had spent centuries transporting Council ships and knew their capabilities better than anyone. They used this knowledge to predict enemy movements and position their forces where they could do the most damage. Salcath ships might not have been designed for war, but they were fast and maneuverable, and their crews fought with the fury of beings who had finally found something worth dying for. High Arbiter. Zefkal watched his perfect formation dissolve into chaos and felt something he had not experienced in 10,000 years: fear. The Council had always won through superior technology and overwhelming force, but these rebels were fighting with something the Council had forgotten existed: the willingness to sacrifice everything for a cause greater than themselves. The humans were doing things that should have been impossible. Their ships were inferior to Council vessels in every measurable way, but they kept finding weaknesses in alien designs that their creators had never considered. Human pilots flew their fighters in ways that violated every rule of space combat, but somehow worked. Most frustrating of all, they refused to accept that they were beaten even when the odds said they should be. Captain Lisa Moore commanded the ESS Defiance in a running battle with 3 Council cruisers. Her ship was outnumbered and outgunned, but she used the debris from destroyed vessels as cover and struck at her enemies from unexpected angles. When her weapons failed, she used her ship's engines as weapons, creating plasma streams that disabled enemy sensors. When her shields collapsed, she ordered her crew to vent atmosphere to confuse enemy targeting systems. The battle reached its climax when Zefkal himself entered the fight. The Eternal Dominion was the largest ship in the Council fleet, a mobile fortress armed with weapons that could crack planetary cores. It moved toward Earth like an unstoppable force of nature, destroying everything in its path. But it was not unstoppable. Admiral Thompson gathered every available ship for a final desperate assault. Human vessels that were barely holding together charged alongside alien ships that had been the Council's enemies for millennia. Vektari warriors' boarding pods punched through the Eternal Dominion's hull. Morden hackers infiltrated its computer systems. SS Alcath engineers sabotaged its engines. Hyvenol fighters swarmed its weapon ports. In the depths of space, something remarkable was happening. The rigid hierarchy that had defined galactic civilization for 10,000 years was crumbling. Species that had been kept apart by fear and mistrust were working together with perfect cooperation. Former enemies were dying to save each other's lives. The Council's greatest weapon had always been division, but humanity had given the galaxy something stronger: unity in the cause of freedom. The Eternal Dominion began to list as its systems failed one by one. Zefkal realized that his empire was ending not with the crush of superior force but with the irresistible power of an idea whose time had come. The galaxy would never again accept that some beings were born to rule, while others were born to serve. As the Council flagship drifted powerless in space, Admiral Thompson opened a communication channel to the entire galaxy. His words would be remembered for thousands of years as the moment when the age of tyranny ended and the age of freedom began. The war that followed was unlike any conflict the galaxy had ever seen. It was not won through superior firepower or advanced technology. Instead, it was won through an idea that spread faster than any weapon: the simple but revolutionary concept that all thinking beings deserved freedom and self-determination. Species that had served the Council for thousands of years began to question why they needed masters at all. President Sam Rodriguez stood before the newly formed Galactic Federation of Free Worlds on the neutral station of Haven Prime. Representatives from over 200 species filled the Great Assembly Hall, many of them meeting face-to-face for the first time in millennia. The Vektari delegation sat beside former Morden administrators. Salkath merchants floated in their mobile tanks next to Hyvenol queens who spoke for billions of their children. At the center of it all, the human delegation looked small and insignificant compared to the alien beings around them, but appearances were deceiving. The humans had not conquered the galaxy through force. They had done something far more powerful. They had given every species permission to dream of something better. Rodriguez looked out at the assembled delegates and saw not subjects or servants, but partners in building a new kind of galactic civilization. "We gather here not as conquerors and conquered, but as equals," Rodriguez said. Her words were translated into hundreds of languages and broadcast across the galaxy. "The human species does not seek to replace the Council's tyranny with our own rule. Instead, we propose something that has never existed before: a voluntary alliance where each species maintains its sovereignty while cooperating for mutual benefit." The proposal was radical beyond imagination. For 10,000 years, galactic civilization had been built on hierarchy and domination. The strong ruled the weak, and the weak accepted their place in the order of things. The idea that different species could work together as equals challenged everything the galaxy thought it knew about how civilizations functioned. Captain Tony Baker commanded the first joint patrol of the new Federation. His crew was a mixture of species that had been enemies just months before. His second in command was a Vektari warrior named Kexval, who had once led boarding parties against human ships. His chief engineer was a Morden named Vilara, who had designed Council weapons systems. His communications officer was a Salkath named Corfin, who had coordinated Council supply lines across the galaxy. The first patrol mission took them to the former Council world of Nexus 7, where refugees from a dozen species had gathered after their homeworlds were destroyed in the war. The refugees were suspicious and frightened, having known only domination and conflict for their entire lives. They could not understand why beings from different species would work together without one group ruling over the others. Baker and his mixed crew spent weeks on Nexus 7, not as conquerors or administrators but as helpers. They distributed supplies, provided medical care, and most importantly, they demonstrated that cooperation between species was not only possible but beneficial. The Vektari were strong and could handle heavy labor. The Morden were organized and could coordinate relief efforts. The Salkath understood logistics and could manage supply chains. Humans were good at solving problems and bringing different groups together. Dr. Helen Davis established the Galactic Institute of Technology on the moon of Luna, where species could freely share knowledge instead of hoarding it. The first breakthrough came when human quantum physicists worked with Hyvanal collective intelligence to develop faster-than-light communication that worked instantly across galactic distances. The second came when Vectari metallurgy was combined with Salkath deep-pressure techniques to create hull materials stronger than anything the Council had ever built. The technological advancement that followed was unprecedented. In just 50 years, the free species of the galaxy achieved more progress than the Council had managed in 10 millennia. New medical techniques extended lifespans across species. Improved agriculture fed populations that had once faced starvation. Clean energy sources eliminated the resource wars that had plagued the galaxy for thousands of years. Most importantly, education and communication technologies allowed every being in the galaxy to learn and grow and contribute to the common good. The rigid caste system that had defined galactic civilization for 10,000 years crumbled in less than a decade. Merit and ability became more important than birth and species. A Hyvanal drone could become a starship captain if they had the skills and dedication. A human farmer could become a galactic diplomat if they could bring different groups together. A Morden accountant could become a fleet admiral if they understood strategy and logistics. The transformation was not without its challenges. Some species found it difficult to abandon the hierarchies that had defined their existence for millennia. There were conflicts and misunderstandings as different cultures learned to work together. Some Council loyalists fought a bitter guerrilla war against the new order, unable to accept that their ancient privileges were gone forever. But for every problem that arose, the Federation found solutions through cooperation and mutual respect. When the agricultural world of Ceres Prime faced famine due to climate change, the Salkath provided water management technology, while humans contributed genetic engineering expertise, and Vectari offered transportation services. When the industrial moon of Titan 7 suffered from pollution, the Hyvanal shared their biotechnology, while Morden administrators coordinated cleanup efforts, and human scientists developed new filtration systems. The former High Arbiter Zefkal served as a cultural advisor to the Federation, helping other Council loyalists understand the new galactic order. His crystalline form had dulled with age and defeat, but his mind remained sharp. He often reflected on humanity's impact on the galaxy and the mistakes the Council had made. "We believed that order came from control," Zefkal explained to a gathering of former Council officials who were struggling to adapt to the new reality. "We thought that peace required hierarchy and that progress meant maintaining the status quo. But the humans showed us something we had forgotten. That growth, freedom, and progress are not just possible but inevitable when people are allowed to pursue their own dreams and ambitions." The galaxy had changed in ways that went far beyond politics and technology. Art and culture flourished as different species shared their unique perspectives and traditions. Vectari war songs were adapted into peaceful symphonies. Morden bureaucratic procedures became the foundation for new forms of poetry. Salkath trade routes became pilgrimage paths for beings seeking to understand the diversity of galactic civilization. Children born in the new galaxy grew up with assumptions their parents could never have imagined. They expected to meet beings from other species as equals and friends. They assumed that differences in appearance and culture were sources of strength rather than division. They took for granted that they could pursue any career or dream, regardless of what species they were born into. The memorial to the war was built on Earth in the ruins of the old United Nations building. It honored not just the human dead, but all the beings who had died fighting for freedom across the galaxy. The central inscription was written in the languages of every species that had joined the rebellion. They died so that we might live free. But the memorial also looked forward rather than backward. At its center stood a fountain whose water flowed in patterns that represented the trade routes and communication networks that now connected every world in the galaxy. Children from dozens of species played together in the surrounding gardens, speaking a mixture of languages and sharing games that combined traditions from across the stars. Admiral Thompson, now retired from active service, often visited the memorial to remember the friends he had lost in the war. But he also came to see the children playing together and to remind himself why the fighting had been worth it. The galaxy would never be perfect, but it was finally free to try to become better. The greatest achievement of the new galactic civilization was not any single technology or institution, but the simple recognition that diversity was strength rather than weakness. The Council had maintained power by keeping species separate and suspicious of each other. The Federation thrived by bringing them together and encouraging them to learn from one another. Humanity's gift to the galaxy was not their technology or their military prowess, but their stubborn refusal to accept that things had to remain the way they had always been. In a universe that had accepted stagnation as stability, humans had proven that growth and change were not only possible but necessary for any civilization that wanted to truly flourish. The galaxy would never be the same, and for the first time in 10,000 years that was exactly what it needed.